Why does this ruling matter so much for states like Georgia?
Well, this case matters as much as any case decided by the Supreme Court in a long time. Every 10 years, used to be every 10 years, states would redistrict for purposes of the House of Representatives and state houses after the census. Now, of course, we're doing redistricting during that 10-year period because President Trump asked Texas to do so. Georgia actually is in a slightly different position than most other states. So we have, I think, 5 majority-minority districts. And what that means is a district where a majority of the people are people of color or minorities. And that's a lot. Georgia is about 33% black, and we have five seats that are relatively safe. That's highly unusual in the South. So, for example, in Louisiana and Mississippi, they have far fewer districts like that. What this case does is it basically ends majority-minority districts if the state legislature wants to end them. The Voting Rights Act at times required majority-minority districts under Congress's power to enforce the 15th Amendment, which of course says there'll be no race discrimination in voting. And Congress is allowed to pass laws that are appropriate to the goal of ending race discrimination in voting. And so the Voting Rights Act, especially the one that was amended in 1982, basically says, as you probably covered earlier, that any procedure that makes it more difficult for minorities to vote violates the law. Well, what the Supreme Court held in Calais is when you redistrict based on race, and the way that Louisiana did in that case, you can only do that if there's a clear violation of the Voting Rights Act. And then the court made a huge move. It said you have to show intent. And that's not what Congress said, that in any way, shape, or form. But now, if somebody wants to challenge a district in Georgia, for example, that is majority-minority, the only justification for the majority-minority district would be to comply with the Voting Rights Act. What the court said is you don't have to do this to comply with the Voting Rights Act. And then the court said, if you redistrict based on race, it's unconstitutional. So it's going to go a long way in ending the idea that we create majority-minority districts, which will, if this carries forward, as many people think it will, in the long run, lead us to a pre-1965 world where there are virtually no black representatives from the South in Congress and far fewer in state house. But I want to emphasize, Georgia has always been different when it comes to civil rights. For example, in the 1960s, Georgia never had riots, really, and never burned. Only major city in the country that's true for. The black middle class in Georgia and the power structure here has had a kind of, nice working relationship compared to other places for a long time. So I don't know how drastic an effect this will have in Georgia, but it will absolutely have a dramatic effect in the rest of the South and much of the other parts of the country.